Every B2B podcast sounds the same. Cookie cutter strategies, corporate buzzwords, high level theory that sounds smart but changes nothing. Meanwhile, the real game changers are out there breaking every rule in the playbook and crushing it. They're not following best practices. They're building their own path and winning in the ways that experts said wouldn't work. These are the rebels you need to hear from, the ones with tactics you can actually use tomorrow. This is Burn the Playbook. Burn everything that's holding you back. Welcome in. I'm Marc Crosby, and this is Burn the Playbook. My special guest today is Richard Blundell, as a SaaS sales and go-to-market expert with more than 20 years of experience scaling B2B software companies as a founder, CRO, and CEO. He's helped dozens of founders grow from first product to recurring revenue, guiding many beyond the 1 million ARR mark and towards investment readiness. As a founder of Vencha and Vencha Scale Academy, Richard delivers practical, proven strategies that cut through the noise with clarity, structure, and hard-won lessons from the trenches. He's also an author, creator, and most recently taught his go-to-market playbook at ESCP Business School in London. Welcome, Richard.
Well, thank you for having me. And can I say how much I've enjoyed your podcast series? I subscribe and also watch all the clips on LinkedIn to get the nuggets that I've missed. But yeah, great pleasure to be here.
Awesome. Thank you so much for that. And I've also enjoyed reading your big book of Braindumps. I have it right here. I think it's a fantastic book. Curious, since this is not your first book, what went into the writing of this one, and how does that differ from the first one?
Well, the first book is the Go-to-Market Handbook for B2B SaaS leaders. I've got a copy here. And that is out and out all about go-to-market. It's a handbook for early stage technical founders. And it specifically focuses on go-to-market. I think it's very challenging for technical founders, and that could be in SaaS or in any market. To be honest, it could be an engineer that started a business. Engineering and technical skills come very naturally to these people, and go-to-market is a completely alien area. And you range in thoughts from, oh, my product's so good, I won't need to sell it. It'll just fly off the shelves and customers will come queuing, through to people who are sort of consciously incompetent and say, if I'm going to scale my business, I need to find some advice. I need to find some guidance. I was just thinking about a LinkedIn post I think you made yesterday about the value of consultants and how they can come in and make a transformational difference to an organization as a consultant rather than being full-time on your payroll. And I think the comment I made on your post was, if you're going to climb up Mount Everest, wouldn't it be a good idea to take someone with you who's been up there before? Mm-hmm. Because it's a treacherous journey. And if you step in the wrong places, you end up exiting stage left. The air gets thin. It's incredibly tiring. You're carrying an enormous weight. So the difference between book one and book two, to answer your question, book one, the Go-to-Market Handbook for B2B SaaS leaders, was out and out about how to stack the odds in your favor of successfully launching and going to market with your product. The latest book, the big book of Braindumps, is a collection of 70 LinkedIn infographics that we've posted over the last 18 months that have had something like 25 million views across LinkedIn. I mean, it's been an extraordinary success story. It started off with Chris, my business partner, Chris Topman, who is a founding partner at Notion Capital, which is a big European VC firm based in London, posting one infographic. And it started from him seeing a problem that founders were doing again and again. And rather than write 1,000 words, he thought he'd create a picture and then comment on the picture. And it got some ridiculous number of likes and reposts. And he thought, well, I'll do another one. And I think sort of, one turned into 10, 10 turned into 50. I think there's something like 250 different one-page infographics that help founders, or frankly, I mean, we talk about this in a software world, but it's any founder in terms of how to prepare your business when you're first getting going, how to prototype and pre-prototype your products, how to test your thesis, that your thesis works, right the way into how to raise capital, how to build a pitch deck, who to approach, which sort of investors to approach, how to approach them, how to behave. how to negotiate, right the way through to how to run your business, lead your business, and ultimately at the end we put in some sales and go-to-market stuff. So it's a collection of 70 incredibly well-viewed LinkedIn infographics, each with a 3 or 4 page commentary, which allows us more space to explain the infographic than, the few words we've used on LinkedIn.
Yeah, if nothing else, if you just looked at the infographics, I just love how they're written, how they're laid out. They're just very practical as far as just the words that are used in them. And I think you mentioned founders and software businesses. I know that this is targeted to founder-led software businesses, but I think you could probably apply a lot of these principles to any business, any startup, even in larger enterprises. Yep. And I'm looking at page 3 here as far as just the hierarchy of launching a startup and just some of these just basic fundamental principles of a business. I don't think that boardrooms are actually having these sorts of conversations, because I think that as you grow, you probably lose your mission, your vision, your strategy, your goals, and what the roadmap looks like. I mean, just the simple questions of what are we trying to achieve? What is our plan and how to achieve it? How do we measure progress? I mean, these are problems that, large companies with 100,000 people are trying to solve, let alone, a startup or a founder-led business. So I think that there's a place for this particular book, whether it's in universities or whether it's in business, large businesses, small business. I think you can take and apply these principles across the far large landscape of business in general. What are your thoughts on that as far as just how these apply to other businesses?
Well, 2 things really. One, one of the surprising things about the Braindumps series is that, they initially came out in no particular order. They were scattergun all over the place. And the first job that I had was to sit down and, print off 100 of these literally on the floor and put them into some kind of chronological order that makes sense. The 2 things I'd say is, the first is that we've been amazed by how many consultants, academics, universities have got in contact with us saying, please, can we have a high-res version of this? And of course, we will provide that, because I think, it covers such a wide, view of starting up, scaling, growing up a business, any business, that we've been surprised by how many people actually use it in different talks and different walks of life. I've had people buy this book who have nothing to do with software, and they're buying it because the fundamentals are the same, whatever business you're setting out. And the second point I'd make is we wanted to create something which cemented in business fundamentals. The feeling being that, starting your own business is scary. It really is terrifying. Running your own payroll. Well, let's go back a step. Leaving your job, deciding that you're going to go away from your warm office, your regular income, your pension, your life cover, your health insurance. Sorry, these may not translate across the US, but hopefully you know what I mean. They're all called something different. But you give that up. You go home and tell your partner, your family, that's what you're going to do. And that's a brave thing in the first place. And if you've never done it before, there isn't really a handbook that takes you right back to fundamental basics that start, as you say, with the very first infographic on page 3 called, the fundamentals of starting a business. And the fundamentals are, have a vision, have a mission. You are going to need something to go back to on the bad days, and you're going to have a lot of bad days. You're going to have far more bad days than you're going to have good days before you get real traction. So you've got to keep your eyes focused on that vision, on that mission, and equally well, return to it, once a quarter. Go back to it. What were we trying to do? How do you know where you are in life if you haven't got a map? We use Google Maps every day of the week. We use GPS every day of the week. We're familiar with maps telling us where we are and how long it's going to take us to where we want to get to. In business, they don't exist. So going back to your vision, your mission, your values, the fundamental parts of your business is a great starting point. And that's what we try to do at the start of the book.
Yeah, no, that's great. I love this book. And there's a lot of lessons to be learned here. And you've probably seen a lot of mistakes made along the years as far as just guiding founders and businesses. And obviously, the main goal for a lot of these businesses is growth. And so what are some of the most common growth strategies that you've seen leaders try to attempt that just don't work and you think that they should get rid of them?
I think if I had one that I would come out with straight out the gate, is from the minute you start your business, please do not obsess about yourself, about your branding, about the color palettes of your logo. Um, your only obsession has to be to see the world through the eyes of your buying persona, through the eyes of your customer. Do not live a day in your life, live a day in the life of the person that you're trying to convince to buy your software, to buy your service, to buy your architectural drawings, to buy your bricks, your mortar, whatever it is you're selling. Do not think of the world and look at the world as to what makes you happy and what you think is cool and what you think is clever. Think only from the world of that person and through the eyeballs of that person who you are trying to convince to part with money, part with reputation, take a risk, make a jump, and to invest in you and your vision and in your dream. You need to think about what they're thinking about on the way to work. You need to think about what is their 3 a.m. stare at the ceiling, slightly sweaty voice track, mind track that's going through their head that you believe that they can solve. They have a family, they have children, they have a car, they have a mortgage. They are ambitious. They want to get promoted. They want to get a pay rise. They want to get their bonus. How do they get their bonus? By hitting the objectives that are set to them by their boss or their CEO. How can what you do help them hit one of those objectives and therefore help pay for the family holiday or help pay to get the kids through school or help pay get the kids through college? How can what you do help them get promoted? How can what you do stop them getting fired? How can what you do means they get a pat on the back from their boss, from their peers for saying, do you know what? Our process was broken and you fixed it. Our process was lacking AI and you've brought AI into our business. Our business was full of Excel spreadsheets and PowerPoints and Word documents, which is frankly early 90s software that still persists today. We're all probably old enough to remember Windows 95 and before. We still use the same software 30 years on. It's not been replaced. And we were drowning in it. And businesses are drowning in PowerPoints and version 1 and version 2. So the biggest mistake I see founders falling into is thinking that they are incredibly clever. And they fill their websites through acronyms and deep tech. And the odds are pretty high that the person that you're selling to will never use the software or the service that you are selling themselves. Mm-hmm. Will buy it for the benefit of the business, for the benefit of their team. But the principal reason they are buying your service, the only main reason they're buying your service or your solution or your software or whatever product you've got, is will myself buying this product make me look better? Might I get headhunted? Might I look better in my business? Might I be rewarded for my efficiency? So I would recommend that early stage founders, anyone running a business, literally spends many days in the life of shadowing, following round your buying personas and just understanding what their life is like, what it's like to sit through your 13th one-to-one that day when they're telling you that the service is rubbish, that the process is poor, that the company is frowning at you, and to think about how they're going to hit their bonus, how they're going to hit their target, and how they're going to do well with whatever you've got to do. Mm-hmm. So look through their eyes.
Yeah, I think putting yourself in your customer's shoes is something that I've typically always done in all the commercial roles that I've ever had. I talk about it frequently in my consulting businesses. I think that's just the way to position your solutions more effectively. And it becomes less selling and more consultative, and it becomes more of a partnership. I think when you have that mentality. And I think part of that mentality, at least for me, I think it comes from, and I heard you say this on another podcast, that you might be an introvert. And I heard that and I said, well, that's funny because I am too. And I think that's actually made me a better salesperson because I'm always taking my time. I'm always thinking, I'm always listening instead of talking more. And I think just effectively that has made me a better salesperson. And so would you say that introverts are better salespeople than extroverts?
100%. I mean, there was a time 20 years ago, 30 years ago, when, shiny suited salespeople would turn up in their fast car doing donuts in the car park, and would walk in and, I'm trying not to think of Wolf of Wall Street, but I mean, that is the archetypal salesperson of the 80s and the 90s. Right. And it was the same in Thatcher's Britain as it was in Reagan's America. And those days have gone. And if people don't realize that and they still think there's a place for that, I think they're very wrong. I think, introverts are deep listeners. I tell you what introverts are brilliant at that extroverts aren't, is deep empathy, deep understanding. And, I was doing some mentoring for one of the founders that I worked with the other day, and we were talking about the 7 habits of highly effective people. We were talking about, win-win or no deal, which is, habit number 4, and how it has to be a win-win to make the deal work. But it reminded me of a phrase that Stephen Covey uses, which is people don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. And that is equally true. If you are setting up your own business to sell into a particular vertical, and you are not an expert on that field and in that vertical, you are going to look very foolish very, very, very quickly. You need to be able to empathize with your buying persona deeply, and not just find out what it is that's what it is that's broken in terms of process, or what's just not happening well for that organization. What is the manifestation of that broken process? Is it, everyone's complaining, everyone's moaning, we can't get our products to market fast enough, we can't build quick enough, we can't drill oil quick enough, what is the manifestation? And yeah, sure, there's time and there's money, and we've all done ROI courses and try and establish that along the way. But the real winners are those introverts that can show deep knowledge, deep empathy, deep understanding, and particularly drill down on personal frustration. How does that frustration, the heartache that what is broken causes, that you can fix? You can take all of this away from them. And the more you understand that, and the more you learn that, the faster any deal will go down through your sales pipeline. The less of that you have, you'll hear people say at the end of sales pitches, do you know what? I love his product. I just can't stand the guy. I'm buying from him. I don't care. I love it. Can we buy from somebody else, or is there another product like that? The greatest salespeople I've ever seen in the software world and the technology world, and I'm not sure how this computes to your world, Mark, is what we call sales engineers. The technical people who sit between the IT team and the sales team, who are very heavily involved in the installation, who sit very close to the user, who are very clever at once the software or the program or whatever it is you're selling has gone live. Take time to make sure they're using it and that it integrates properly and they're getting value and the dashboard works. They are the very best salespeople, because do you know what? They're not selling. They're not selling. And yet they are. They're
No, I was just going to say that does translate very well into kind of all the different roles that I've had, coming from the manufacturing space and always relying on technical people and engineers and chemists in order to get their perspective. And I think that's part of what it is just not thinking that you have all the answers, no matter what seat you sit in, whether you're a CEO or you're a sales rep or you're a customer service person. Always understand that there's value in talking to other people within your business, getting different perspectives. I think without that, you're never going to be able to have a clear picture of what it looks like to stand in your customer's shoes if you only have one viewpoint. And so typically, even on sales calls or presentations, I'm typically bringing in not just myself, I'll bring in the technical people, I'll bring in the engineers, I'll bring in the customer service people, anybody who has a perspective or an opinion that can help at least shape the vision of what we're trying to achieve together in a partnership and providing solutions. I want those people in the room, especially since, and I know some people, like you said before, just have this perception that salespeople are not genuine as far as just their approach, and they're just trying to sell because they want a commission. And if I bring other people in the room and they have another opinion and they're not tied to a commission, so to speak, I think it just speaks volumes as, hey, we're here all together to try to help you solve your problem. It's mutually beneficial. But I think you have to have that team involvement. I think team alignment as well. it's one thing, I think, to probably get like a founder or a CEO to understand that you need to put yourself in your customer's shoes, but how do you do that across an entire team or an entire organization? What do you typically, teach as far as, your practices and what's in the book?
Well, I think wargaming is really important. I mean, there's something that comes out of the book, both the first book, the Go-to-Market Handbook for B2B SaaS Leaders, and how to grow, run, and raise money for your software business. Two things come out. One is testing your thesis before you go into a customer, particularly if you're an early stage business. You have truths that you hold to be, that you think are correct, but you need to prove for certain that your thesis is right. Why is it in software, unlike say pharmaceuticals or manufacturing, we don't actually market test what we do before we go and tell a customer what's wrong with their business and how you can fix it? And you could be completely wrong. The second thing we don't do is practice. When I was I don't know, 12 years old, 15 years old, I went to play golf with my dad at a local golf course in the UK, Welwyn Garden City, just north of London. And we turned up and there was a kid in a bunker with a bucket of balls. Now, it's quite rare that you see people on driving ranges with a bucket with balls. It was just unusual. We walked past him and had this great big, rack of balls, and he was in the bunker and he was hitting bunker shots, over and over and over again. Anyway, we played around. I'm going to guess it was 4 hours. I mean, it must, maybe longer. And we came out and the guy's still in the bunker, right? Still hitting balls. And it started raining. And he was now hitting bunker shots out of, light sand, heavy sand, all kinds of different things. Anyway, we walked in and we're chatting to the pro, thanks for the round, blah, 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 blah. So, by the way, that guy's incredible out there. He must be the best bunker player in the world. And the pro said, no, he's not, but he wants to be. Anyway, he said, remember his name. And his name was Nick Faldo. And Nick Faldo hit 1,000 golf balls a day down a driving range. And that's why he won 6 majors till his hands bled, right? Mm-hmm. And that's because he practiced. And yet we'll go into a sales environment with a team that turns up at different times, dressed differently, with different opinions, different points, probably don't even know who we're meeting, know nothing about the backstory of the person we're meeting, haven't read their LinkedIn profile, hasn't read their blogs, hasn't deeply researched what's important to them, doesn't know whether they've got kids, or whether they're a Cowboys fan. I'm trying to make this as American as I can, or a Manchester United fan or whatever. Some kind of hook to get the conversation started, to get over that awkward bit when you first walk in. So war game, what are we going to say here? You have to win their trust, right? And trust is something that takes about a year to build and about 10 seconds to lose. And when you've lost it, it's gone. Don't overpromise and then underdeliver. If someone says, "Oh, does your product do this, this, and this?" If it doesn't, say no. The word I try and get early stage founders, any founder to say, any executive in any business, is no more often. Because otherwise you end up with a product set and a process set that gets bigger and bigger and wider and wider and wider, and your business can't support it. And then you end up letting your customer down, you lose your customer, you get bad reviews, and you're out the door. So, that meeting, when you meet them, be honest, be true. When it doesn't do something, say no, it doesn't do that at the moment. It's a great idea. We might do it in a later iteration. But you have to build that trust. And you have to practice the meeting before you go into it.
How do you manage that for a founder-led business when the goal is to make more money, and typically most businesses, they're in the business to make money and sell, and I think it's very tempting to just probably sell your product or whatever it is, whatever industry it is, to as many people as possible. How do you get people to understand that that's probably not a good strategy, and maybe, niching down is probably a more appropriate one? How do you balance that as far as just making those sales and then making the right sales to the right ICP?
Yeah. I mean, this is sort of the difference between startup and grow up, really. I think, when I was a founder, we were just so grateful that anyone said yes. In the early days, you remember you're starting something from scratch. You've seen an idea. By the way, there's probably 3 million founders in waiting out there right now who are working as an IT, someone in the IT team for a big organization, who are spending their evenings and their weekends working on some kind of agentic model, AI to do this or do that or do the other, waiting for their moment when they feel it's right to take their genius to market. And I don't know whether you've ever written a book or painted a picture or sung a song or written a poem that creator anxiety you have, in the early days. I've seen it in art galleries where people are being so rude about the art, and yet the artist is in the room. It's watch Amadeus when the abuse that Mozart gets from Salieri and from the court, and his genius has created this music, and it's heartbreaking, right? But in the early days, you're so pleased when someone says yes. And you're running along a figurative line of machine guns, waiting for where you're not going to get repelled, and find the gap, and then you run through that and hope you're going the right way. So it's very, very common for early stage founders to end up with 12, 15 different customers with 12 or 15 different use cases, because you just don't care what it is. You just want someone to say yes and to recognize your skill and your genius. Then your mind turns to, and I hope this crosses over to your world, Mark, your mind turns to, as a founder, I now need to hire a salesperson, because if I hire a salesperson and a marketing person, I'll make more sales. Completely incorrect. Because, hiring a sales team and a marketing team too early, until you've absolutely not only validated your product pain fit, it's been absolutely validated. You need to have a whole cadre of delighted customers, 12, 15 customers who love your software, use your software, are raving about it on dark social, who are, slacking other friends, other industry people, WhatsApping, saying, have you worked with these guys? They're absolutely brilliant. Only then, when you've had all of that and you've got a very, very niche and tight, what we call uncomfortably narrow market map, an uncomfortably narrow value proposition, should you then consider even begin considering about hiring a sales team. But my world is littered with founders who have hired highly expensive sales and marketing teams too early. They failed. They get fired straight out the door. Job number one, get rid of the sales team, when actually the problem normally is upstream of that in the core value proposition that is not understandable enough to an 11-year-old. Steve Jobs was right. I want a mobile phone that what did he say, 7-year-old can pick up and use. That's still right in every product. And yet how many times do we look at websites and have a completely inexplicable value proposition on the homepage of a website? So, everyone wants to grow. Everybody wants to, make more sales because they believe that makes more value. How many companies do we know went off like an absolute rocket for 12 months, taking on customers that were just churning, waiting, and then they get to a point and they plateau and everybody realizes the product doesn't work, or it doesn't integrate with their CRM, or it doesn't, work with their processes. And then they all churn, they all give up, the business crashes, everybody loses their money and goes home. So to answer your question, the reason we get niche is you want 15, 20, 25 delighted customers who are coming out with comments like, God, I love what you've done getting our products to market quicker. What else do you do? What else can you fix around here? That is the ultimate buying signal. It's a salesman's dream, right? I'd like more of what you've got. I'd like more of you. Can you white label this so we can sell it to our partners and our customers? So just be careful. Do not scale too quickly. Don't go and raise $1 million and then spend half of it on an overpaid sales and marketing team until you've absolutely validated your product and you've got, genuine product pain fit.
Yeah, that's well said. And I think that your comments around hiring a sales person or a sales team too early make a lot of sense, just because you're probably not doing it for the right reasons. The same thing why you might get rid of 20% of your sales team, or hire a marketing person, or get rid of the full marketing team, or get rid of your customer experience team. Whatever the ebb and flow is as far as hiring or getting rid of sales, marketing, and support systems, it's probably for the wrong reasons.
Yeah.
Like you said, it starts at the top, I think, and that's also why I keep looking back at page 3 as far as the hierarchy of a startup, is that, what are we trying to achieve? How are we going to measure that? And all those things that go back to the foundation of the business, I think, and probably this is the same way with founder-led businesses, is that you get far along and then you forgot what we are in it for. Who are we trying to help? What problems are we solving? And I think, as you may have said already, how often should those conversations be had? Whether you're year 1, year 5, or year 10, how often should you revisit these sorts of just foundational strategies in a business, whether you're, 10 people or 100,000 people?
Well, at the very latest, quarterly. I mean, if you can do it monthly, do it monthly. But it's amazing when we go on and start our mentorship programs with the founders and the businesses that we work with, and we work with early stage founders. But I think our real value comes in that sort of plateauing, north of $1 million of ARR through to and above. We work with Motorway, who are a car company, a car auction site in the UK, a genuine unicorn in the UK. But to answer your question, quarterly, I mean, one of the questions we always say to the founders is, when did you decide to be shaped and molded by your customers, not by your original vision? What was the original vision? Mm-hmm. And they'll say, it was this, this, and this. And you say, well, why are you now over here doing what your customer wants? Because your customer will want to bend what you do to suit their needs, not to suit your needs, because at the end of the day, they're the ones paying. And remember, the buying persona is doing this because they want their life to be better, and they want, people to recognize the risks they took and the change they brought to their organization. And it's incredibly common that people wander off the reservation, at times, and start being something different than they originally wanted to do. And that's why you need to write it down at the start of your journey. Ritz-Carlton's mission statement is, ladies and gentlemen, serving ladies and gentlemen. One of the greatest mission statements of all time, because what they're saying is, we expect nice people to come to our hotels. We are for that mid to top market range. It says it straight out the gate. You have to be a lady or a gentleman to come. And we will be, our service will be fantastic. So anything that doesn't fall into that road, shall we sell cheap rooms? No. Shall we hire, just anybody with no experience to work in customer services? No, because our mission statement is to be ladies and gentlemen serving ladies and gentlemen. So, every quarter, just check in and say, guys, are we going the way that we wanted to do? And so often when we unpack their value prop and we unpack their story, and I'm sure you do this with the companies you work with, you'll say, why have you not done this, this, and this? And they'll say to you, oh, we used to do that. That was the original idea, actually, but we did it for a bit and then it didn't work. And actually, we had 3 customers who asked us to do this, and now we're doing this, even though it only works for those 3 customers, not the 300 customers that your original idea worked for. So there's gravitational pull that customers will take you on. They'll ask you to build more product, more service, more stuff that's only for them. Build it once, sell it many times. You build and configure. You don't write 18 versions of your product, one for each company. That's our product. It does that today. Does it do this? No. It does that, that, and that. Will it do this? It might do down the line, but we need more than you as a customer to tell us to do that. Oh, we'd like to help pay and design that. Great. But today, this is what it does, and this is what we were put on the earth to do.
How important do you think in this process is differentiation and identifying what that looks like for your product, your service, the people, as compared to everyone else that's in the market? Obviously, there's probably a lot of similar products or whatever it is. How do you frame differentiation in your discussions?
It's critically important, particularly in my world, because obviously AI has emerged in the last 18 months, 2 years. It's been around longer than that, but in most people's minds, I mean, there probably aren't many people in the world that don't have ChatGPT on their mobile now as an app, probably on the homepage, the home screen of their phone. And everybody, I mean, this is a bigger bow wave than the original .com boom, and that was ridiculous. When you had a situation where AOL was worth more than British Airways, with no assets, no customers, and I remember thinking back there in the .com bubble that burst 18 months, 24 months after it all went mad. And we're seeing the same again with AI. And, this is a world that we are all still trying to figure out where it begins, where's the middle, and where's the end. And what role do humans have in AI if AI is doing so much? And sadly, it's very difficult to differentiate in AI, because I go on calls with people did one this morning, with a deck, and they're really excited and they know it all, and they're going to conquer the world, and they're going to do 3 million of ARR in their first 12 months. And I don't want to be the one to sort of pop the balloon, but lots of other people are doing it the same, and they're better funded, and they raised £1 billion. And it's very common in my world to hear founders say, yeah, but my competitors raised 100 million at 5 billion valuation. Why can't I? Well, because they got there first, because they got there quicker. But I tell you what they did do, and this is what all winners do, is they keep it incredibly simple.
Mm-hmm.
Their messaging is simple. They are not a Swiss Army knife. I don't know whether you have those in America, but these sort of multi-utility knives where, 1 minute you're a knife and the next minute you're a magnifying glass, and then you're tweezers, and then you're the tool that gets stones out of a horse's hoof, and then you're a nail file, and then you're a saw, and you end up with this hodgepodge of products that no one really knows what you are. The winners said, I'm a knife. That's what, and I'm only a knife, and I don't do anything else. And so if you want to differentiate, I would start with your message. I would start with passing your website to your 12-year-old niece or nephew and asking them to explain back to you what it is your business does. Mm-hmm. And if they can't, you've got a problem. And if they can, because the Instagram age, the TikTok age means, it used to have like 38 seconds. The luxury of 38 seconds for someone. People used to go to websites and have a look, and they'd have a mosey around, and they'd hit those little, those landing pages and all that little hamburger, gone, right?
Yeah.
Instagram, boom, bang, 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 bang. And you get, I think, probably 7 seconds or something like that. A goldfish has a memory span of 8 seconds. So humans have now become, gold. So if you want to differentiate and you want people to stop and stare, you have to say something that makes the person you're trying to attract go, that's me. I've got that problem. And they're brilliant at it in business to consumer. How much money is spent on business to consumer marketing and messaging? Billions and billions of pounds. Mm-hmm. For whatever reason, business to business has fallen way behind the curve on this. I don't know whether it's a lack of money or a lack of inspiration or a lack of creativity. But, if I wanted to sell a teeth whitening service or a teeth straightening service, I would have a photograph of Tom Cruise's teeth before he had his teeth done and a picture of Tom Cruise smiling now. And I would need to say nothing else. If I want to sell weight training, gym memberships or weight loss programs, I have a fat man and I have a thin man, and it's before and after. And that picture paints 1,000 words. Now, if I'm a fat man, I'm going to stop and go, oh, that's me. I want to be a thin man. It's more complex than that, because I suggest the messaging you've got for fat to okay is a different set of messaging than you've got from okay to 3% fat. And that's where it's clever, right? You need a different message set. But why? This is the challenge with business to business sales and marketing. We need to adopt the pain visualization. We need a picture that paints 1,000 words of what is broken and what is not working in their organization, so you don't have to use 1,000 words. So when someone lands on your website, it's words of one syllable. This is who we're for. This is what we do. And down here are a bunch of people who are just like you, who've done what you did and have had these results. And you're like, that's exactly what I want to do. I want to find out more. And then they'll stop and they'll hit the learn more button or the whatever, if they're on a mobile, or they'll click on the call me. So I think your original question was about differentiation. I think I probably wandered off. But if you want to differentiate, my thesis is the simple people will win. The people who keep it very, very simple will win.
Exactly. And I imagine the same has to translate to like your pitch decks, your PowerPoints. The same mentality as far as just the first slide or two. They better be spot on, just like your website or your landing page, so people get it and they don't start drifting off to their phone and seeing what's on Instagram.
And you know what? That's a really good point, Mark. Which is, you were talking about meetings earlier and bringing your team in. Don't fall into the trap of getting technical in the meeting when you've got the buying persona in the room. They couldn't give a monkeys. They don't really care how it works, actually. They don't care how you do it. Imagine them as walking into a car showroom. They want to see how it looks, how it makes them feel, how they feel driving it, what their neighbors are going to say, what their peers are going to say, how jealous, other people in their company are going to be that now they've got this new Wizzo solution, and how, as long as it's affordable and it installs quickly and it's fast to value, they're the ones that are going to get the credit and get promoted. if you end up drifting off into, the technology that sits behind it, or the machine that drives the thing, you've lost that buying persona. They don't care. They're probably full of what we call red energy, which is be bright, be brief, and be gone. That is what should be running through your head. All they care about what's in it for me, and what's in it for my team, and what's in it for my company. If you want to have the technical meeting, you must, because you've got to bring in the CTO along the way, or anybody technical along the way. That is a meeting for a different room and a different time, and you can let them out geek each other on terminology, but get the right. And by the way, if you're in a investor meeting or you're in a sales meeting, and they're looking at anybody else but you, and particularly if they're looking at their mobile phone, don't forget to pick up your wooden spoon on the way out. Because that's what you're going home with. Find out from publishers how much they spend on the front cover of a book and the blurb on the back. It's millions. They take months doing it, because they know that is what drags you in. How long do shopkeepers spend getting the front of their shops looking incredible to pull you in and their messaging? You have one slide in a pitch deck. It's the front slide. That's it. They're seeing hundreds of these, and unless you say, "This is the boat. This is lovable. This is the boat you have to be on. We're going to get 100 million, and this is how we're going to do it," and people think the market's big enough, it goes over their shoulder and into the bin. Exactly the same with PowerPoints. Hello, this is our company, and this is your company, and this is your logo, and this is who's in the room, and this is where they went to school, and this is what. Just why am I here? Be bright. Be brief. Be wrong. You are not getting your products to market fast enough, and here is why. And here's how I can help you. And here's 3 of your competitors who already bought my software, who are getting it to market, 3 weeks quicker than you are, and they're making this much profit. And the person that bought it just got promoted and is now on his yacht in Hawaii having a lovely time. Bang. That simple.
That's awesome. And that's how every pitch should go.
Yep.
And people who are listening to this, if you're developing a PowerPoint presentation for whoever, whatever business, just replay that and think about, what the slide you're developing right now means to the person that's going to be listening to it. Let's pivot to our next segment called Burn It or Build It, which is our rapid fire lightning round.
Yep.
And so I'm going to ask you about 10 questions. Just tell me burn it or build it and give me a brief reason why. But these are like typically hot takes in sales and marketing. So we'll start with the first one, that AI replaces all cold outreach.
Build it. Well, I think cold outreach doesn't work anymore. So that's burn it. People don't read emails, so it's burn it. If AI can help you navigate through the complex forest of your defined target customers, which is also in the book, we should look at that, and get you to them quicker and help you with research, then great. But I don't think cold outreach works, full stop, anymore. I mean, when was the last time you answered an email? Did you answer a LinkedIn in-mail? I mean, only if it's incredibly relevant and you feel the person has researched you and known you and taken the time to understand you, might you do that. If I was to do it, I'd handwrite them a letter and post it to them, because you take time to understand them. So AI, build it, because it's coming, and there's some amazing tools out there. Cold outreach, I'm not sure that works anymore.
I agree. So kind of it depends.
Yeah.
But learn it, but don't overuse it potentially.
Yeah. Yeah.
Number 2, churn is the most important metric that you should monitor.
Correct. Probably the most important one, closely followed by customer acquisition cost. How much is it costing you per customer? Closely followed by lifetime value. So how much are you spending on your sales team, your marketing budget? How much does it cost you to get in? In our world, it's often a monthly recurring revenue number, or it's an annual, paid annually. But, you sold a £20,000 piece of software, or £50,000 piece of software to a customer, but it's cost you £80,000 to acquire that software. You aren't going to acquire that customer. You aren't going to be around very long. But to go back to the question, churn is the most important metric, because if people are buying your product and they are binning it, or they ghost you after 3 months, 6 months, 9 months, then you've got real problems, like a bucket of water with holes in it. And that's why the first person I would hire would never be a salesperson in my business. The first person I would hire would be a CS person, customer services person, because I want them to get intimate with those customers, make sure they're using it, make sure they're finding it valuable, make sure it works, the integration works, it's all working seamlessly, because we cannot have churn. It's the biggest killer of businesses, of where they're at. That CS person will then be able to go back to marketing with some great messages, because they've heard it from the horse's mouth about what works and what doesn't, and tell the sales team, sell it like this or explain it like this, because this is how they understand it. So yes, churn is the most important metric. Build it.
To add on to that, is some churn good churn?
Yes. Particularly when you get to that point after 12 or 18 months. I mean, a lot of the greatest companies in the world get rid of the bottom 20% of their clients at the end of a year, end of 2 years. You know, companies, when they're scaling, end up with this long tail of customers that aren't paying them very much, but expect absolute, volumes out of the customer services team and support team. And I think there does come a time when you have to say, look, whilst you were a great, I mean, you obviously don't say this to the customer, but while you were a great customer when we first started, we can't support you anymore. And what you'll do is you'll put the prices up or the support costs up, and they may well go elsewhere. So there is a point where churn is valuable, but it certainly isn't in the first 12 months of your life as a business, first couple of years. And if they do churn, you have to find out why. You really do. It doesn't work. It didn't integrate. It didn't do the job that we did, because it'll very often happen when you have 10 different customers with 10 different use cases, because it'll work for 7 of them and it won't work for 3. It's good learning. Take it on the chin. You failed. You didn't support them. It didn't do what you promised them in that sales call. Learn from it. Change your value prop, change your business, and move on.
Pay attention to churn is the lesson of the day.
Yeah.
Building go-to-market for AI. So that could be a variety of different meanings, but what are your thoughts on that, just as far as
100% build? 100% build it. There are too many AI founders out there. I don't know, your similar war stories, who believe their product will sell itself, who believe they're so clever that actually all a customer needs to do is to see their product and reach for their credit card. The reality is that's nonsense. I keep hearing that song. Everybody's talking at me. I can't hear a word they're saying, because I just see so much AI doing so many different things. And if you think your customers aren't bored of hearing it, number 2, scared of it, genuinely scared of AI, and potentially resistant to doing it. Number 3, remember, anybody you're selling AI to is sitting there in that meeting thinking, does this going to replace me and my job? Am I out of a job now? Number 4, will I get it through, particularly in the US, will I get it through my ethics team? So you have to, with AI, double, triple, quadruple down on your go-to-market messaging, and make sure that it obsesses about the 3 a.m. visceral customer pain that we talked about at the start of the podcast. You've got 8 seconds, so come up with 10 words that's going to make your buyer stop and go, I've got that problem, I want to find out more. So yeah, please don't build anything in any business and expect it to fly off the shelves. It doesn't happen. Read Steve Jobs' book, read Bill Gates' book, read all of them. They prototyped dozens of times and failed again. It's no surprise we only started writing 2 books after we had failed so spectacularly on the business. That's where we did our learning. It's very easy to captain a winning team. It's very difficult to do this when things aren't going right. So just spend money, find consultants that can help you with how to build an effective go-to-market strategy. It's vital. It's the ball game. It's the whole ball game. Without it, you're done.
Sometimes the best product doesn't always win.
Yes.
Buyer intent metrics. You see this a lot on LinkedIn and a variety of other platforms that are out there. Burn it or build it.
I'd say build it, because I still think it has its place. I mean, any insight is better than none. Any, buyer intent, any, I, for fear of repeating myself, it always amazes me how little research we do on our target customers, and how we expect to, if you happen to have gone to the same university or the same school or live in the same town or support the same football team or do anything, that is gold when you're in a meeting. You've got some way of IDing with the person, particularly if you're kind of extroverted in this sense, but introverted, in the rest of your life. So anything that gives you any help in finding out what's going through that customer's mind in terms of buyer intent. Has it been done to death? A little bit. Do we still believe it? I'm not sure. I think my point would be anything that gives you insight. Is it too spooky to go on the Instagram profile of your buyer persona? Is it too spooky to go on the Facebook profile? Now, on one hand, yeah, right? But on the other hand, no. If they've got 2 kids and they like hiking and they've got pictures of them up the Appalachians and that's what you like, bring in a map of the top 10 Appalachian trails as a gift and just say, oh, I don't know, I know you like hiking. I thought you might like this. Bring them a gift that's relevant to them. Have something to say, have something that crosses that chasm of awkwardness from hello, how are you? How's the weather? It's even harder in Britain, right? Because we're so reserved to actually having a conversation. So yeah.
Yeah, it helps just to show them that you took a little bit of time, that you know them a little bit. Like you said, bridge that gap. Number 5, and I'm going to let you take this however you want to. LinkedIn, burn it or build it.
I'm very worried about LinkedIn. They keep changing their algorithms. They keep changing and thinking. I don't know what you found, Mark, but they need to go and read page 3 of the book and remember what they were there for. Now, if they're going to be a recruitment company, cool. Go and be a recruitment company and a place for putting your CVs, and that's what you're going to be, right? If you are going to reward people who truly engage, LinkedIn is a social network, right? So it's no different from Facebook or Instagram. It's the social network of business. Therefore, their algorithm responds positively to individuals saying stuff on LinkedIn that used to be educational, interesting, informative, valuable. Now, I don't know, because I don't even get the post of someone whose posts I like every day and comment on every day anymore. Just no longer ranks me as that. So let me put it this way, if you're going all in on your go-to-market on LinkedIn, you've got a really big problem, because it's a moving ship. It's a moving goalpost that keep moving. And I think people are starting to get very frustrated with it. And I think it's open to disruption. And I can't wait for someone to come in and disrupt it. I think they've had it their own way for too long. Now, just for saying this, and because you're, quite rightly, we'll post this on LinkedIn or wherever, I may well have my account suspended. It happens. Really? And we have had our accounts suspended for liking too many posts. Surely that's the point of a social network. But so yeah, I'm very worried about LinkedIn. Would I burn it? No. Would I build my business on it? No, not now, not at the moment.
Okay. Good thoughts. Good comments there. I like that. Somewhere in between. I'm a little concerned myself. Yeah. Gated content. This applies typically, I think, to websites, but a variety of other places. You got to put in an email address and some information before you get the information. Burn that or build it.
I burn it. And I know that's not popular. I think that's a 10-year-old strategy. I think people expect information quicker than that. There's not a lot they can't learn on ChatGPT. They can put your website in. If your website's rubbish, by the way, and it hasn't got any information on it, and no one can learn anything, guess what? When it comes into ChatGPT, they're not going to learn anything. So fill it full of stuff that you can learn it. Stopping people getting to your genius in any way, I don't like personally. I've got a business partner who loves it. I hate it. But now that Google uses a GPT rather than Google, right? No one looks down the page anymore, right? So the Google model's gone. All you look at are the words at the top, right? It's a summary. So now that's happened. Why would you stop anybody getting to your genius? I would rather, if your content's great and it's eye-catching and people come to it, why would you stop anybody getting to it? I would make it as open. I want ChatGPT to pick me up. I want them to find my genius and come to me and say, I want to find out more. So I'm burn it, I'm afraid.
Agreed. Burn it. Fake it till you make it as a founder strategy.
Burn it. Absolutely burn it. I mean, fake it till you make it. You've got to be genuine. if that's what fake it till you make it means, if fake it means mislead people, overpromise, flag it, spin it, lie to people, you've got to be authentic. You've got to be real. They will be able to smell it on you if you're authentic. Your customers. This is why founders hiring sales teams too early, or any businessman hiring a sales team too early, is often fatal, because your customers want to see your vision. They want, they're buying off you. Actually, it's your vision, your idea. How can you possibly commute that onto somebody else? It's very, very different. Mm-hmm. Be authentic. If you haven't got something that's going to leave a dent in the universe, don't fake it. Build something that's going to leave a dent in the universe. Message it brilliantly. Be genuine. Be authentic. Be the real deal. And I think you'll get the returns in spades.
Gotcha. And the last one, kind of a wild card. Business cards in 2025.
That's brilliant. Because I haven't seen one. I haven't got one. I've never seen one. Then probably in the bottom of your email. By the way, spam blockers are now so effective that most of what you send on cold outreach and email will go into spam. They're just really clever, and they do it for a reason. Most serious executives don't even open their own email at work anymore. They'll have somebody else opening it. That's probably where the business card sits. I don't think people care who you are until you can convince them that you can help change their life and make them a better businessman and a better person. So yeah, burn it, sadly. I mean, keep your LinkedIn profile. If you're serious about business, make sure your Instagram and your Facebook profiles match your LinkedIn profile. So it's not about putting pictures of granny on there. You can just you can use WhatsApp for that, right? You don't need Facebook anymore. If you want to send pictures of granny, send it on WhatsApp, But it doesn't have a place in the modern world that I can see.
Gotcha. Okay. Well, let's finish up with one final thought. Leave listeners who lead a sales and marketing team, founders, CEOs, with one actionable tip that they can implement straight away to make an impact this week.
Book 3 appointments for the next 3 days with your target customers and go and spend those 3 days with them, with their team in particular. Find the champion. Find the aggravator who's tired of this broken process and wants it fixed and wants it changed. Sorry, you can probably hear the church bells in the background. That's very English for you, isn't it? And empathize and deeply understand the world of your customer, not your world. People do not care how much you know until they know how much you care. And the reason why that's a brilliant tip is that none of your competitors will be doing it. None of them. So if
That's a fantastic tip.
If you do it, they will sit around and say, wow, do you know what? That guy got off his backside, came down to see us, spent some time with us. I'd like to spend some time with him now in return.
Perfect. Love that tip. And the church bells is our indication that we are at the end of the Burn It or Build It segment and Burn the Playbook podcast. Thank you, Richard, for joining us. It's been a pleasure speaking with you.
Very welcome. Thanks for having me on.
All right. Cheers. That's how you burn the playbook. If this conversation fired you up, don't let it end here. Subscribe wherever you get your podcast. Share this episode with someone who's tired of playing by the old rules. And if you're ready to challenge your own sales approach, let's connect. Find me on LinkedIn at Marc Crosby or head to digitalrebelsconsulting.com to see how we help B2B teams win differently. Until next week, keep burning what's not working and keep building what is.